The world ended. Congratulations. Now you need a place to sleep that won't become your tomb. Because let me guess, you still think that moldy basement where you store Christmas boxes will work, right? Spoiler, it won't. And that abandoned mall that looks perfect in the movie. It's a death trap. But relax, I'm going to teach you how to choose a real shelter. A place where you might, maybe, survive more than 3 days. And you know what's interesting? The best shelter might be right under your nose, but you never thought of it that way. I'll reveal what it is in a bit. But first, if you want to survive the end of the world with a little more style and less gangrene, drop that nice like down there. Comment what your shelter would be. If it's my house, I'm sorry, but you're already dead. And subscribe to the channel, because someone needs to keep you alive when civilization turns to dust. Let's go. Survival isn't luck, it's sarcastic planning. Step 1. Location, because geography kills more than zombies first. Let us talk about the obvious that nobody respects. Where you are matters more than what you have. You can have the most reinforced bunker on the planet, but if it's built on a floodplain or in the middle of an urban escape route, congratulations. You built your own concrete coffin. The ideal location has 3 sacred rules: distance from urban centers, controllable access to natural resources, and strategic elevation. Translation: far from desperate people, close to water and food, and in a place high enough for you to see who's coming to kill you. Before they arrive, urban centers become death zones in 72 hours. Not an exaggeration, it's mathematics. Millions of people, supermarket stock for 3 days, infrastructure dependent on electricity. When the system falls, the city becomes a cauldron of despair. First they loot the markets, then the houses, then each other. Minimum distance, 50 kilometers. Ideal, 100 or more, but distance alone doesn't solve it. You need accessible resources without depending on others. Potable water is non-negotiable. Spring, perennial river, access to accessible groundwater. Nothing about depending on sporadic rain or water trucks that obviously won't exist anymore. Cultivable land for a garden, forest for firewood and eventual hunting. You're setting up self-sufficiency, not a weekend campsite. And elevation, it's not glamour, it's pure tactics. Elevated position gives you 3 advantages. Visibility, you see who's approaching 4 kilometers. Natural drainage, rainwater flows away. Doesn't accumulate, creating mud and humidity. And difficulty of approach, climbing up is tiring. Discourages casual invaders looking for easy targets between plain and hill. Choose the hill, always. DIY real. Get a topographic map of your region. Yes, paper. No, Google Maps won't work when the towers become decorative scrap. Mark all urban centers within a 50 kilometers radius with red circles. Now mark permanent water sources, rivers, springs. Not that little lake that dries up in summer. Use blue. Trace main escape routes, highways, railways, main roads that will become mass evacuation corridors. Yellow. Your ideal shelter, it's in the empty space between these 3 things, preferably at elevation. Minimum altitude of 50 meters above local sea level. Why floods? Tactical visibility. And because climbing up is tiring, it tires you, but also tires whoever's coming after you. Add another layer. Mark hospitals, barracks, prisons, green. These places become inevitable conflict points. Hospitals attract sick people and scarce medications. Barracks have weapons, but also attract attention from organized groups. Prisons, they eventually open or are invaded, releasing desperate population. You want to be far from all these points. Draw 10-kilometer circles round each critical point. The area that remains, outside all circles, is your hunting zone. Within this zone, look for elevations with access to water and secondary roads, not main ones. Visual, imagine a burning chessboard. The black squares are cities, enemy territory where resources have already been consumed and only violence remains. The white ones are open field, to vulnerable, no cover, no resources, exposed. You want a gray square, that intermediate space where nobody thinks to look first. But that gives you eyes over the entire board. You're not in the game, you're above it. Watching the pawns destroy each other while you remain invisible, the real risk. Choosing the wrong location kills in 3 ways, puts you on the mass evacuation route, where you'll compete with thousands of desperate people for resources. Exposes you to natural disasters. You can't predict floods, landslides, prolonged droughts, or isolates you so much that any injury becomes a death sentence because there's no way to seek help. The difference between surviving 3 months or 3 years starts here, in this single choice. Comfort kills, familiarity kills. Emotional attachment to bad locations kills more than any fictional zombie. That beautiful beach house, Vulnerable to storms and invasions from the sea. Apartment downtown. Vertical trap when the elevator stops. Family house in the suburbs. Right in the middle of the urban red zone. The perfect location allows you to control who approaches. And there is a specific type of construction that transforms any median terrain into a perfect, strategic point, but that only makes sense after you understand the next step. Oh, and since we're talking about preparation, if the power goes out tomorrow, do you know what to do in the first 72 hours? I made a complete video about blackout survival, practical strategies that can save you when everything shuts down. Link is in the pinned comment. Worth watching before you need it. But back to the shelter. So you found the place. Great. Now let's talk about structure. Because it's no use having the perfect location if your roof collapses in the first storm. Most modern constructions were made to last 30 years with constant maintenance. In the apocalypse, there won't be maintenance. There will be rain, wind, humidity, extreme temperature, and the weight of your own paranoia trying to reinforce everything with improvised materials. You need a structure that withstands brutal neglect. Reinforced concrete is king. Structural steel is queen. Wood. It's the court jester that rots and burns. Let's talk about basic physics that everyone ignores. Structures fail for three main reasons: compression weight crushing from top to bottom, tension force is pulling and cracking, and torsion lateral force is twisting the structure. Concrete withstands brutal compression, steel withstands absurd tension. Together, reinforced concrete withstands almost everything that nature and hostile humans throw at it. Wood. It rots with humidity, cracks with temperature, burns with fire, and termites devour it alive. In year 1, wood is charming and rustic. In year 5, it's organic compost. Die real. If you're choosing between existing constructions, look for masonry walls more than 30 centimeters thick, thermal insulation, and ballistic protection as a bonus. Concrete or fiber cement roof on metal structure. Visible concrete foundation without cracks. Test the walls. Knock with your knuckles. Hollow sound. Drywall. Plaster. Crap that doesn't protect anything. Solid and dull sound. Real masonry that can keep you alive. Check for signs of infiltration, dark stains, mold, paint peeling if the structure is already compromised before social collapse. Imagine after, when you have no way to make adequate repairs. Foundation. Dig around just a little. No need for archaeological excavation. The foundation should be solid concrete going down at least 60 to 80 centimeters into the ground. If you see stacked bricks or loose stones, that house was made by someone who didn't plan for it to last. Cracks in the foundation. Structure is moving. Moving structure eventually collapses, usually at the worst possible moment. If you're going to build from scratch, unlikely, but let's pretend you're ambitious and have time. Deep concrete foundation, minimum 80 centimeters more if soil is unstable, or clayey concrete block, or solid brick walls with internal and external plaster roof with structure independent of walls, so that if a wall cracks, the ceiling doesn't collapse together. And crucial, multiple layers. External block wall, thermal insulation layer, rock wool, styrofoam. Even compacted newspaper works in desperation. Finished internal wall. Why 3 layers? Bullets. Temperature, humidity, sound. In that order of importance. External layer stops bullets and absorbs extreme temperature. Insulation regulates internal climate and muffles sound. Internal layer holds the insulation and provides minimal finishing. Visual. Think of a turtle. Hard shell, multiple keratinous layers. And it doesn't care what happens outside because inside is protected. Your shelter is your shell. If it cracks, you become turtle soup. And in the apocalypse, there are many hungry people looking for protein. The real risk: weak structures kill silently. Roof that collapses during a storm. You die crushed while sleeping. Wall that gives way under extra weight of improvised reinforcements. Sudden collapse without warning. Humidity that creates toxic mold that destroys your lungs over months. You don't die screaming, you waste away coughing with your ribs hurting with each breath, while that black stain in the corner of the room spreads and each breath becomes more difficult, until it simply stops. Structure isn't aesthetics. It's not about the house looking beautiful or inviting. It's a matter of not dying while sleeping. It's about waking up in the same place where you closed your eyes, with the roof still over your head and the walls still firm around you. Oh, and that type of construction I mentioned before: agricultural silos, industrial bunkers, old treatment stations, deactivated factory warehouses, structures that were made to withstand decades, without constant maintenance, ignoring weather, thick concrete of 40 to 50 centimeters, reinforced structural steel, deep foundations that reach solid rock. Nobody wants to live in them because they're ugly, cold, without charm. Exactly why they're perfect. Keep that information. Step 3. Excesses. Front door is for idiots. Everyone thinks about walls. Nobody thinks about holes. Doors and windows are your structural and tactical weak points. Each opening is a polite invitation saying, "Hi, come in, kill me, take my food, rape my family." In the real civilized world, you need access. You need to enter and exit comfortably. In the apocalypse, you need controlled access. Controlled means few openings, all reinforced, constantly monitored, and with Plan B to seal permanently if the situation becomes unsustainable. Modern architecture loves openings. Panoramic windows, sliding glass doors, open concept integrating environments, beautiful for decoration. Magazine, suicidal for survival. You need solid walls with minimal and strategically position openings. Die real. Drastically reduce excesses. Seriously, that charming house with panoramic window. It's an aquarium where you're the goldfish waiting to be caught and devoured. For immediate reinforcement of the main entrance, you need steel plates minimum 3 mm thickness. Ideal 5 mm bolted from inside the door with long screws. Horizontal steel bars crossing the door and fixed on the wall on each side. And this is critically important, internal hinges on doors. Why internal hinges? Because if they're on the outside, anyone with a screwdriver removes the pins into minutes and done. Your $3,000 armored door becomes expensive decoration leaning against the wall. While they enter smiling, internal hinges equals impossible to remove from outside without destroying the entire wall. Multiple redundant locks, upper and lower bolts that enter the ceiling and floor. Resistant central lock Tetra type and removable steel crossbar. Nothing like simple Yale lock that you open with credit card or hairpin. Yale lock is polite. Invitation. Thick steel bolts are aggressive and definitive denial. For windows, external bars aren't enough alone. External steel bars plus internal steel or reinforced aluminum shutter. The bars hinder physical entry. The shutter protects you from opportunistic shots and thrown objects. Shutters should open from inside, close with robust internal lock. Preferably 3 mm steel or 5 mm reinforced aluminum. Common glass windows. Replace with 10 mm polycarbonate or wired glass. Common glass explodes easily with impact. Polycarbonate withstands brutal impact. You can hit it with a hammer and it cracks, but doesn't break if you keep common glass for any reason. Apply at least 8 mm security film. When it breaks, the shards stick to the film instead of exploding inward, cutting everything. The emergency exit, crucial and universally neglected, can be trapdoor and floor leading to tunnel or basement, with distant external exit. Discrete side door without external handle. Opens only from inside with hidden mechanism. Upper floor window with rope or folding ladder. Even camouflage hole in wall covered by heavy furniture. The important thing, it's not obvious from outside to observers. You can use it under extreme stress and in the dark, and it takes you to covered or protected area, not to exposed open field. Test this emergency exit monthly, in the dark, under simulated stress, because it's no use having elaborate plan B if you discover the rope rotted, when you ray fleeing a fire, or that the trapdoor jammed with rust, or that you can't move the furniture covering the secret exit, because you stacked 50 boxes on top over the months. Visual, your shelter is a medieval castle under siege. The front door is the drawbridge, obvious, impossible to ignore, but defensible with adequate preparation. The only official entrance you absolutely control. The windows are narrow arrow slits, small, protected, made for you to shoot or observe from inside without exposing yourself vulnerable. And the emergency exit? It's the secret tunnel that's not even on the official map, the one the king uses when the castle is definitely lost and surrounded. You are the king of this micro-kingdom. Your shelter is the castle. Behave with adequate strategic paranoia. The real risk, poorly protected excesses are like bleeding copiously in water. With hungry sharks circling nearby, you're actively calling lethal problems, and problems in the apocalypse come into distinct types: desperate humans and organized humans. The desperate try to break in with brute force, noise, without elaborate plan. Violent improvisation, these you repel with adequately reinforced doors and intimidating presence. The organized carefully observe your routines, see you enter and exit. Notice predictable schedules, study all visible excesses, and choose the statistically perfect moment to invade when you're vulnerable or distracted. These you repel with constant unpredictability, camouflaged excesses they don't detect, and never, ever falling into obvious and predictable routines. Weak doors don't kill you alone, they gently let in what will kill you violently, whether hostile, human, opportunistic animal, uncontrolled fire, or simply lethal cold because the door doesn't seal properly and heat constantly escapes. And you know that detail about multiple layers I mentioned before, it applies perfectly here too. External door reinforced with steel, watchable antechamber or intermediate corridor. Solid secondary internal door, to physical barriers always infinitely better than a single one. If invaders get past the first with effort, you still have second line of defense. And the precious time they take breaking through the first is time you use preparing active defense. Or using the planned emergency exit. Speaking of layers of protection, a massive blackout brutally eliminates your first layer of defense, external communication. Food refrigeration. Information about threats if you haven't watched the blackout survival video yet. I recommend taking a serious look. There are practical techniques there that perfectly complement everything I'm talking about here. Link in the pinned comment. Continuing. Step 4. Resources water. Food in the illusion of independence. You have thick walls and steel doors. Beautiful. Now tell me, what are you going to drink? Everyone romanticizes the impenetrable fortified shelter. Nobody thinks about basic survival logistics. You can have the most secure bunker in the southern hemisphere. But if your water runs out in 2 weeks, congratulations. You built an air-conditioned mausoleum with paid installments. Resource independence isn't aspirational luxury, it's absolute minimum requirement. And no, stockpiling 500 bottles of mineral water isn't a viable plan. It's bottled desperation with printed expiration date. Cruel and inevitable mathematics, adult human needs 2 to 3 liters of water per day just to drink and not die of dehydration. Now add minimal hygiene, cooking food, washing inevitable wounds. It goes up to 5 to 10 liters per day per person. Family of 4, 40 liters daily, 1,000 to 100 liters monthly, 14,000 for 100 liters annually. Do you have 14,000 liters stocked in adequate containers? No? Then you don't really have water. You have temporary postponement of death by dehydration. Die real, water first, always, absolutely, always. Your shelter needs to be strategically close to reliable natural source protected spring, perennial river, accessible groundwater access, or have functional rainwater collection system. Always prefer natural source when geographically possible, more reliable, less dependent on unpredictable climate for functional rainwater collection. You need adequate gutters around entire roof perimeter directing the single collection point. Buried cistern naturally keeps water fresh and protected from external contamination. Food-grade plastic or lined concrete, completely sealed against contamination. First significant rain of the month. Discard completely. Initial water is washing roof and brings accumulated dirt. Second rain onward. Store carefully. If you have viable access to groundwater, invest in artesian well, but truly deep, not those decorative shallow ones of 10 meters. Absolute minimum of 30 meters, more if the region is naturally dry. Deep well access is cleaner and geologically reliable underground water. Install quality submersible electric pump. But absolutely crucial, also install cast iron manual backup pump when power definitively runs out, and it will eventually. Manual pump is literal difference between having accessible water and dying with inaccessible water under your feet. Test water regularly with basic kit. Turbid water equals suspended particles. Water with perceptible odor equals organic or chemical contamination. Water with metallic taste equals heavy minerals or rust in piping. Contaminated water kills slowly and with prolonged suffering, debilitating. Chronic diarrhea, paradoxical dehydration, devastating intestinal infections. Sustainable food, protected and productive garden minimum 50 square meters per person. More if you want nutritious variety and redundancy, small and manageable livestock. Chickens for eggs and meat. Rabbits for fast reproduction, intelligent rotating stock. The garden needs to be physically protected, adequately fenced, preferably inside main security perimeter. Not exposed where anyone sees and decides to freely harvest your accumulated sweat. Non-hybrid seeds are absolutely critical for long sustainability. Hybrids F1 grow vigorous in first generation, but don't generate viable seeds for replanting. You plant once beautifully, and your production is finished. Non-hybrids heirloom, Creole, traditional generate seeds you replant infinitely in sustainable cycles. Diversified seed stock, beans, corn, squash, tomato, lettuce, carrot, beet, essential seasonings. Broad variety guarantees balanced nutrition and prevents lethal vitamin deficiencies. Renewable fertilizer, functional composter for vegetable organic waste. Animal manure if you maintain livestock. Intelligent crop rotation preserving soil. Don't depend on industrial chemical fertilizer you can't indefinitely replenish. Learn adequate composting now while you have time and access to information. Animal husbandry brings essential protein, nutritious eggs, and eventual psychological companionship before you become the solitary psychopath on the hill. Who talks to plants? Chickens are objectively ideal, eat varied scraps, consistently produce eggs, provide meat when necessary, relatively low maintenance, adaptable. Rabbits reproduce absurdly fast. Lean and highly nutritious meat, silent and discreet. Avoid animals to large cows, adult pigs, consume excessive resources, too noisy. Attract unwanted attention kilometers away. Intelligent rotating stock, non-perishable foods with verified long shelf life, rice, beans, pasta, diverse canned goods, salt, sugar, oil, realistic stock for 6 to 12 months minimum per person, FIFO system religiously applied, first in, first out, consistently consume the oldest, systematically replenish with new. Stock isn't sealed vault, it's living pantry that constantly rotates maintaining freshness. Visual, imagine a closed and self-sustaining ecological cycle. Rain becomes treated potable water. Water irrigates growing food. Consumed food becomes organic waste. Waste becomes rich compost. Compost feeds more food in cycle. Animals eat unsuitable waste and produce valuable animal protein. You are the managerial center of this delicate cycle, constantly managing flow. If a critical part breaks, the entire cycle progressively collapses. And when the cycle irreparably breaks, you begin to inevitably waste away. First obvious physical energy, then subtle mental. Then you become anonymous statistic. The real risk, critical external dependence is slow and agonizing death sentence. Every day you need to risk leaving safe perimeter to fetch contaminated water. You expose yourself vulnerable to other hostile humans, opportunistic animals, incapacitating accidents. Every necessary contact with strangers for scarce food is tense negotiation where you can lose literally everything, including life. The dangerous illusion of independence is naively thinking that 3 months of stock are magically sufficient. They're not even remotely. Stocks inevitably run out. You need sustainable continuous production because in prolonged apocalypse there's no convenient replenishment supermarket. There's only what you patiently cultivate, carefully raise, or violently steal. And consistently stealing eventually puts you on the wrong side of someone more armed, more desperate, and less tolerant than you. And here insistently returns that concept of redundant layers. Stocks are first layer immediate emergency. Own production is second layer medium sustainability. Access to controlled external resources is third layer eventual commerce or trade with verifiably trustworthy neighbors. All three function integrated simultaneously. Depending on only one single is fatal vulnerability waiting to happen. Step 5. Energy and invisibility. The art of existing without being seen. You have water, food, solid structure. Marvelous. Now turn on that noisy diesel generator at 11 p.m. in total silence and see what happens to you. Energy is pure and cruel paradox in apocalypse. You desperately need it to survive comfortably. But it transforms you into giant beacon flashing come rob me of everything. Light on at night. Every desperate person sees it for kilometers. Diesel generator running? Every hungry person clearly hears. Smell of hot food cooking. Every starving person feels it in the wind. You urgently need energy, but you need even more absolute discretion. Because at the end of the world, being visible is being priority target. Being audible is being condemned. Being detectable is being eventually killed. DIY real, silent, and self-sufficient system. Photovoltaic solar panels minimum 3 kilowatts installed. More if you want relative luxuries like functional refrigerator, quality deep cycle stationary battery bank stored capacity for 48 to 70 consecutive hours without sun, minimum 10 kilowatt hours. Industrial quality pure sine wave inverter. Don't economize here. Cheap inverter destroys electronic equipment. An MPPT charge controller adequate to complete system voltage. Install panels at low and discrete angle. Definitely not on roof where everyone sees them shining in sun. Like luminous billboard of resources here. Integrate into structure if geometrically possible. Green roof with strategically mixed panels. Low ground structure camouflaged by dense vegetation. Even portable panels you assemble at dawn and disassemble at nightfall. Paint metal frames in matte earth color. Absolutely nothing of chromed reflective surfaces that shine detectably 4 kilometers of distance. If you realistically need backup generator, and you do, because consecutive cloudy weeks meteorologically exist and batteries eventually chemically die. Choose diesel model, more thermally efficient. Fuel store significantly better than volatile gasoline, less dangerously flammable. But build serious acoustic shelter for it. Thick concrete or masonry chamber. Double walls with dense acoustic insulation rock wool, acoustic foam. Silenced exhaust directing smoke downward, dispersing before exiting visibly. Partially buried if topography permits. Generator only turns on in absolute emergencies or strategic times. When natural ambient noise is higher, noon when there's strong wind, during noisy storm. Never at night in total telltale silence. Stored diesel in adequately sealed metal drums, protected from direct sunlight. With chemical stabilizer additive. Diesel lasts years if stored correctly. Lighting, discipline, total blackout at night. Without exceptions ever. Thermal blackout curtains on all windows without exception, thick multi-layer fabric or industrial thermal blackout, completely sealed on sides, mandatory antechamber before main entrance to sets of heavy doors, never open both simultaneously, light contained only between the two, red LED flashlights exclusively for internal use, less detectable at distance, preserves adapted night vision, sustainable kitchen, efficient solar oven or rocket mass heater stove, zero visible smoke. Efficient heat, abundant renewable fuel, firewood, twigs, dry waste. Solar oven is insulated box with glass and adjustable reflectors, cooks slow but absolutely free. Rocket mass heater is high-efficiency stove that burns fuel almost completely. Little residual smoke, radiant heat that heats environment prolongedly. Absolutely avoid traditional open fires, conventional grills. Anything that produces vertically visible smoke column. Smoke during day is obvious sign of active human presence. Smoke at night with unmistakable smell of cooking food. Engraved invitation for unwanted and violent visit. Visual, you are a nuclear submarine navigating enemy territory. When you're exposed on surface, everyone sees you clearly and you become priority target for torpedoes. Prolonged survival is in perpetually navigating submerged, present and functional, but completely invisible to enemy radar. Each unnecessarily lit light, each avoidable noise, each detectable smoke trail is a cute ping on circling enemy sonar. You don't want to ever be detected. You want to be the ghost others swear they saw but never objectively confirm. The real risk, visibility kills fast and violently. That comfortably lit house on dark hill. It desperately screams valuable resources here, come take violently. And when basic resources become regionally scarce, people's morals completely disappear. They will invade without hesitation, not from inherent evil, but from existential desperation, which is infinitely worse. Because desperate people don't negotiate rationally, don't reason logically, have absolutely nothing to lose trying. The cruel and avoidable irony, you can die violently defending energy you only needed excessively, because you wanted too much unnecessary comfort. That air conditioner noisily running at night, mechanically detectable noise at 500 meters easily. That TV on with bluish light flickering in window, screaming signal of functional electricity when everyone around is in absolute darkness suffering. You become priority target for completely unnecessary luxuries for real survival. Step 6. Defense and psychology, because you are your own weak point. Last part. The most important ignored one. You did everything technically right. Perfect location, solid structure, sustainable resources, discrete energy. And still, you can die pathetically. Because the definitive weakest link isn't the thick walls. It's you. Your fragile mind. Your dubious capacity to make rational decisions under prolonged extreme pressure. Your questionable ability to distinguish real threat from debilitating paranoia. Physical defense is obviously important, but psychological defense definitively decides whether you survive 1 year or 1 functional decade. Real defense is 90% intelligent prevention, 9% intimidating deterrence, and only 1% direct violent confrontation. If you got to physical confrontation, you already lost strategically. Because confrontation means vulnerable exposure, unacceptable risk, spending precious resources, high possibility of incapacitating injury. In apocalypse without modern medicine, simple injury becomes systemic infection. Infection becomes sepsis. Sepsis becomes agonizing death. You don't want confrontations ever. You want invisibility so effective that nobody even knows you exist there. DIY real, physical defense, defensive perimeter, high and intimidating basic fence to 0.5 meters minimum, 3 meters psychologically ideal, aggressive barbed wire on top tilted outward drastically hinders climbing, cheap improvised sensors at approach points, cans with stones hanging on stretched nylon wires cheap, surprisingly reliable, zero battery necessity, discrete natural or artificial trench around main perimeter, something that hinders coordinated fast approach without being too obvious. 50 centimeters deep ditch disguised with vegetation, strategic camouflage holes on natural approach routes, elevated observation points with adequate cover, improvised tower, second floor with small strategic windows, even robust tree with discrete platform, You need to see approach before they reach perimeter. Binoculars are essential non-negotiable equipment. Armament adequate to legal and practical situation. Firearms if you have serious training. And legal access, and you should have both. Bladed and improvised weapons if you don't. Machetes. Axes. Spears. Bows. Ammunition is finite and non-renewable. Learn infinitely reusable weapons. Bow and arrow. Crossbow. Slings. Tactically silent and infinite if you produce arrows. DIY real. Psychological defense. Prolonged solitude kills as much as dehydration. Literally. Prolonged social isolation causes clinically measurable mental deterioration, profound depression, debilitating paranoia, progressive loss of cognitive function, even vivid disturbing hallucinations. You actively need rigid mental structure to survive functionally for isolated months or years. Absolutely fixed daily routine, rigid schedules for sleeping, waking, eating, working productively. Sounds bureaucratically idiotic. It's not. Rigid temporal structure creates essential mental anchor. When every day is indistinguishable, you lose sense of time, lose existential purpose, gradually lose sanity. Disciplined routine keeps you functionally human. Renewed purpose, concrete daily goals, continuous improvement projects, some tangible thing that makes you get up motivated. Today I'll reinforce west fence. This week I'll build second productive bed. This month I'll learn to adequately tan leather. Daily purpose effectively combats paralyzing existential despair. If you're in group, establish absolutely clear hierarchy and unquestionable rules from the start. Who decides in emergencies? How do we divide scarce resources? What punishment for who breaks essential rules? Destructive internal conflicts kill more isolated communities than objective external threats. If you're alone, maintain minimal contact with external reality, religiously updated calendar, regularly written diary, radio even if it's just passive listening. Absolute total isolation is slippery slope to terminal paranoia, where you shoot at imaginary shadows and die alone incoherently delirious. Visual, imagine a medieval castle under prolonged siege. The walls are thick and strong, but if guards fall asleep from exhaustion, the castle inevitably falls. You are simultaneously wall and guard. Need to be both simultaneously without failing. Failing at one completely nullifies the other. Walls without adequate vigilance are just temporary obstacles delaying invasion. Constant vigilance without walls is vulnerable suicidal exposure, both together. Perfectly calibrated, constantly maintained, that is real sustainable defense. The real risk, inadequate defense invites opportunistic invasion, fallen fence, visible accumulated trash, predictable routine, obvious signs of vulnerability that attract opportunistic human predators. But psychologically excessive defense also kills insidiously, transforms you into paranoid prisoner of your own fortress. You spend so much time vigilantly watching, obsessively reinforcing, planning against imaginary threats that you completely forget to live functionally. Paranoia consumes more metabolic energy than heavy physical activity. You waste away mentally while your physical defenses become impeccably perfect but useless. The delicate balance is in being adequately prepared without being debilitating paranoid. Constantly vigilant without being insane, rationally cautious without being paralyzed coward. The devastating final irony, the best shelter isn't physical place, it's functional you. Your mental adaptability, your psychological resilience, your proven capacity to transform any space into temporary home and defend what matters without losing what essentially makes you you. Physical structure eventually fails, resources inevitably run out, energy eventually shuts off, but adequately prepared mind adapts, creatively improvises, functionally survives. So, location, structure, excesses, resources, energy, defense, 6 fundamental pillars. You now objectively know more about choosing shelter in apocalypse than 99% of population, who still naively think everything will magically work out. Will it? No, it definitely won't work out, but at least you have real chance, small chance. Statistically unfavorable, but concretely real. That open loop from the beginning, the best shelter under your nose. It's not your current comfortable house. It's not ready-made bunker bought for $1 million. It's that forgotten place that nobody else wants. Abandoned industrial buildings, deactivated treatment stations, forgotten agricultural silos, factory warehouses that closed decades ago. Strong structure industrial concrete withstands centuries. Invisible nobody looks twice at industrial ruin. Abundant every region has several. Accessible. Usually without clear owner. Occupation is possible. Everyone romantically runs to forests or expensive bunkers. You take what nobody looks at and transform into silent fortress. The layers I insistently mentioned. It wasn't pointless repetition. It was fundamental principle. Everything connects overlapped. Apocalypse isn't single event, it's system of overlapping collapses. Your survival depends on overlapping systems responding integrated, and you know what's funny? You're reading this now, probably comfortable, thinking it's abstract theory. But when the world decides to remember that civilization is temporary historical anomaly, you'll remember this script, and you'll wish you had paid more attention. Or not. Maybe you're the type who will die complaining that Wi-Fi stopped. Survival isn't luck, it's decision. And if you want to stay alive when the lights go out, literally, watch the blackout video I left pinned in the comments. Because safe shelter is no use if you freeze in the dark or lose all food in the first 24 hours. The two videos work together. This one teaches you where to be, that one teaches you how to act. Survival is complete system, not single video. You're still alive for now.